Hello and welcome to another F12 programming. My name is Mike Hewitt.
I'm Jacob Brains.
And today we're going to be talking about something, we're going to dig deeper into something that normally is pretty simple. For and for each. Jake, take it away. What do you got?
I'm going to wipe out some of this code here. We're in a project for an older video. And let's just play around in here a little bit. We're going to talk about fors.
You're going to need one.
Versus for each.
In squiggly. There you
go. Thank you. So, a lot of people consider these to be fairly interchangeable, and there's a lot of myth about what they're actually doing and how they're working in the background. And the belief is that the for is the preferable method. It's the much simpler method, and it's been around forever. It's closer to the metal, so to speak,
right.
Back to the C days. So, when we write a for, we set some value equal to wherever we're starting. We set some limiter on how many times what the qualifier is that we want to continue, and then plus plus is the general
how you want to iterate.
How you want to iterate, because usually we're going up by 1. So we're just going from 0, stopping at 10 or before 10 technically. And we're going to loop through him. So if we write a piece of code here that says something like console.write, I'm just going to put in X, and I go to run this code, 0 through 9.
Yeah, and you might want to iterate to, or you might want to iterat through a random number. Say you have invoices or some number you don't want to give away, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's multiple ways of iteration too.
And the for is pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not seen as much anymore because the ForEach has kind of taken over. And the reason for that is because modern programming doesn't use arrays near as much as we used to. Mm-hmm. Or if we do, they're abstracted away from us. And what we use now are more collections. So if I create, let's say, a list, for example, of ints, and matter of fact, I'm going to snag this code again, and I'm going to add X. So effectively, we're going to fill our list with these 10 values.
Mm-hmm. Just
as an example, let's talk about how a for each works. So there's a lot more overhead on a for each because it's doing a lot of stuff behind the covers. So the only thing you can for each over is things that have an iterator, which is a particular interface that it's required to support in order to use it. So you can't use a for each on anything. You can't we can make a for, and we don't even have to have an array, right? We can just come in here and we want to iterate over these numbers. We just make stuff up. But for a for each, we have to have an object that is a iterator, and we don't really need to get into the details of what that is right now. But I need to say, I'm going to say int y for this example, in list. It's a much more English readable syntax. So we're just saying for every int in list, we're going to treat it as the variable y, and we're just going to use it. And I'm going to write almost the same code here. Matter of fact, I'm going to comment this one out just so there's no confusion over that. So when we get down here, we're going to loop through these 10 and do a console.write. And you can see here's my 0 through 9. Looks exactly identical. So the interesting thing is which one's faster, right?
Okay.
So the belief among most people is that the for is faster, albeit maybe a little more difficult conceptually to understand, a little more error prone, because if you don't get this number right, you might cause problems. So if you were trying to iterate over this list, just like we did here with the for each, with a traditional for, you're going to have to come in here and say, well, I need X to be less than the count of the list, and then I need to go into the list, and I need to grab the value out of it. Mm-hmm. And you can see this starts to become a little more complicated. And of course it's going to, yep, okay, there we go. So we're going to say, well, we're going to go from 0 to however many are in the list. We're going to go up by 1 each time we iterate through our for here. Go to the list, pull out the X, lot of complication here. A lot of places where you can get it wrong. That's the first issue we run into with fours. And the crazy thing is, the ForEach is actually faster in most cases. And I don't know that I'm going to say there's an absolute where it's always true. And the reason for that isn't because ForEach is a really great way of doing things so much as it is the guys at Microsoft have spent so much time optimizing the compiler for ForEaches and taking advantage of every shortcut they can, that in most scenarios, the ForEach is outperforming the for in this kind of a scenario.
Interesting.
Either one's correct. I mean, you can't get it wrong unless you're in a high-performance situation where you really need to start getting into the nitty-gritty. I don't know anybody that's that far into it that it really matters for 99% of their programming. But yeah, that's the two general ways that we iterate through things.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, is there anything else in there? With the for, can you do... Well, I know in the for you can go in the negative.
The for, we can do negatives, we can do positive.
Can you do that with the ForEach? Can you do an opposite of the ForEach?
No, because the ForEach, you're just iterating through a list, and you're iterating over... You can't even control the order in which you're iterating over the list. You've got to sort your iterator. If we were going to sort this, we could sort it.
I guess you could do it by order.
Yeah, we could sort it before we do the ForEach with link or something. But yeah, in and of itself, a ForEach doesn't have any ability to sort. There are some interesting things we can do in fors and ForEaches for that matter, such as we could say if some condition. I'm just going to say true, even though that's a crazy piece of code. We could do something like break. So we could say, when some condition is true, I don't care where we are in the for or how many more we have to go through, stop.
Or you can even skip, right? You could say x plus plus.
Yeah, we're doing a for. Yeah, if I want to jump ahead, I mean, make sure it doesn't break your code.
Right.
But yeah, we could say if some condition, if I could get the IntelliSense to work for me, if some condition is true, x plus equals 10, and we could jump ahead 10 spaces. Now, I know that there's not 10 items in this array, so this might, you got to think through the ramifications of your code. But yeah, we can definitely do that. Or the other thing we can do is if I've got, let's say I've got, I'm just going to put a little comment here and say,
I was going to say async.
A whole bunch of code.
Yeah.
And just to make things read better, I don't always recommend this, but we can say, well, we don't always want to do that. So if some condition is true, I can say continue. And that just says, go ahead and go back to the beginning and start over on the next number.
Okay.
It's not really necessary because you could get the same thing by saying
false.
If false, and you could do that.
Right.
But it's all about readability.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, does that cover most of it?
I think so.
Thank you for watching that video from F12 Programming. Please remember to like and subscribe. That does so much for us in the ratings. You have no idea. Also, don't forget to comment below. I hope you enjoyed, and good luck coding.